the way in which I guide my clients through releasing those imprinted family patterns is so that they can be authentically true to themselves.
Welcome to the Inner Life Skills podcast, where coaches, leaders, guides, and visionaries make a living making a difference. Let's guide, coach, and lead with wisdom together.
What an absolute pleasure to have Yvette Duncan on the Inner Life Skills podcast today. Yvette has had the most incredible journey. I think we've known each other for what feels like many, many years. And I've watched her career blossom to the point that now she has international clients. She's been invited to speak at an international summit on the Enneagram. And just what a treat to speak to her today. If you have any interest in the Enneagram, in family constellations, and you're also asking yourself the question, how on earth do you combine the two? Please stick with us. We're going to have a wonderful deep dive conversation because Yvette has successfully combined family constellation facilitation with Enneagram coaching and training, and it's earned her really a place on the international stage. We're going to be going into Yvette's personal journey, which is quite an inspiring journey. So, as well as looking at her frameworks. So lots of wonderful guidance, insight, wisdom coming your way. Let me welcome you, Yvette, to the show.
Oh, thank you, Colleen. I'm delighted to be here.
Me too. It feels like it's been a long, long journey. So let's...
Let it in.
Yeah. So what do you feel moved to share with the listeners and the viewers, perhaps just about some of your story and how you came to the Enneagram work and how you came to the family constellation work and then applied that to your own personal healing and then, of course, started using that with clients?
Yes. So we've known each other for probably 17, 18 years.
Wow,
Very
has
long
it been
time.
that long? I think you're right, 18 years. Wow, yeah. And it started with an apple tree seminar, I think.
Yes, that's correct. And at the time, I was going through some relationship different dynamics that I was finding difficult to navigate. And then I stumbled across Inner Life Skills, and you were offering at the time the Apple Tree seminar, and I thought, well, this is a very good place to start, which it was. And from there, I was just so intrigued by the work for my own personal growth and healing and seeing things from different perspectives. And you then introduced us to the Enneagram, which for an Enneagram 5, that was like a dream come true. And really just putting language to what I already knew to be true. Having watched different people over my life and why it is that they do what they do, and the Enneagram just putting words and language to that things were just then clicking, and it made things make a lot more sense of where I'd intuitively felt things, and now I had a way in which to describe them. And that was magical. And just by those little nuggets, how I started being able to see things from different perspectives and through different lenses, that it opened up a whole new world within the relationship things that I was trying to navigate at the time. And I loved the work so much that I then enrolled in the whole 6 months coaching journey on the master coach part of really understanding myself and others. And I really fell in love with the work so much so that I then decided to become a coach, master coach, and just go all the way. And now I'm even a licensed trainer. And so
Can you believe it?
Incredible.
Really?
I know it's been an incredible journey, and it just feels like such a beautiful family to be part of, the Inner Life Skills family.
Well, I appreciate that massively. And I love how, your personal growth journey unexpectedly opened up a career path for you. You're a stay-at-home mom, and I know you had a health challenge as well that has been significant, and that also was part of your personal growth journey. And perhaps that's how you started also opening a door into the family constellation toolbox. So if you want to perhaps share a bit about that, I think people would love to hear.
Yes. So that really has been the catalyst for my own healing and growth, and how it is that I now serve my clients. In those relationship dynamic challenges that I was navigating, where things just felt so different and new in the way that things were done in my family versus the way things were done in another's family, and just navigating that, of times in which I had used my voice and spoken up and then felt punished for speaking up because it made others feel uncomfortable, that I then over time noticed how I was just holding back more and keeping things in and not speaking up. And then I started noticing in my body how uncomfortable that was feeling, and times that I wanted to use my voice and speak, that I would weigh up, is this worth it? And then if it didn't feel worth the consequences that were going to come, I would just swallow my truth and what it is that I wanted to say. And that just got more and more uncomfortable internally for me. And then that physically then manifested in my body. And then I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And that there became the turning point, where I heard those whispers, and then it just got louder and louder and louder. And it's like, what is it going to take for her to actually see that this is not okay? And then my body just spoke to me. And then I was diagnosed with the thyroid cancer. And that in itself was quite the journey of having my thyroid removed, and then they damaged or removed my parathyroid glands. So it complicated the healing after having the thyroid removed. And just that whole journey, how that got me to really pause and consider, what's really important, and why am I still here? Because I had many health scares and complications after that, so I was diagnosed with the thyroid cancer in 2009, and then in 2013 I was overdosed with vitamin D. That it's literally a miracle that I'm alive. And at the time, our oldest son had just turned 1, and so many different complications. I won't go into all of it, but all of that to say that it literally is a miracle that I'm still here today. And I then started questioning, why is it that I'm still here? What are the gifts that I now get to bring forth from all that I've been through? And so I wouldn't change anything from the past, because it's gotten to me to where I am today, and in how I now get to share this incredible work of combining the Enneagram with the systemic family dynamics and constellation work, of how things are so interconnected, and all the layers within the layers.
The layers within the layers. And, a couple of things stand out for me, that, that life trauma, the health challenges, the relationship challenges, even pushing you to the point of asking, why am I still here? And there's so many important themes that I think a lot of natural coaches, a lot of seekers, a lot of people who are going through struggles, they face those kinds of questions as well. And I wonder how many people can relate to swallowing their voice and, being so sensitive to the impact that speaking and being honest and really voicing ourselves can have in our relationships, and starting to almost walk on eggshells. And perhaps it's a very common 5 and even perhaps 9, but I think all the Enneagram types could lean into it, but especially the Enneagram types that are more, let's say, predisposed to introversion or that kind of sensitivity. No doubt there was also a systemic family connection. There was something systemically, some kind of baggage inherited. And there you had these tools now, and they played such a significant role for yourself that I think it's natural for people, when we grow, we want to give. So you freed yourself from a lot of that struggle with a lot of dedication and courage. And then it's natural, your apple tree, your true self, has now grown. So you want to bear fruit, you want to give, you want to contribute, you want to create a career that's fulfilling and meaningful. So I just want to acknowledge some of those themes, celebrate them with you. A courageous and brave journey. So how do you combine the Enneagram with systemic? And maybe in case people don't really understand what family constellations and systemic work is, perhaps just start there and then explain to the folks a little bit about what that is. What is systemic family constellation work?
So systemic family constellation work is a spatial arrangement of the dynamics at play. And that may be with our relationship with ourselves, our relationships to another. And so in a family constellation, we set up you in relation to whatever it is that we're looking at. And so then that becomes a spatial arrangement. And who's looking at who? Which direction are you looking in? Which direction is your mother and father looking in? Or whatever it is that we're setting up. And just getting a sense of what are those dynamics that are at play that are holding that energetic field in place where it becomes difficult to navigate your own healing and growth. And so what I love about the family constellation work is that it gets to the root cause without going into the story. And it just highlights and allows you to see what you are ready to see.
I love
it
that.
Won't go. Yes.
And I think just for the folks that are quite new to the idea, because I remember even, maybe 20 years ago when I came across family constellation work, it was such a huge leap in a paradigm shift that when someone explained it to me, I didn't understand at all. So maybe if I want to add that spatial concept, is just to remind people that family constellations, you don't have to bring family members to a constellation. You do this work all inwardly, and the group that you are working with represent parts of your family dynamic. So there's a representation, but it's not role-playing. It's not like theatrical. The words that Yvette were using, there's an energetic component to it, and it sounds a lot more, let's say, abstract or mystical than it actually is. It's quite beautiful, and what amazes me is that I know, Yvette, you do this work for clients around the world, even online. So classically, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic days, you attended a constellation. You showed up, and with a small group, you chose people to represent different members of your family. You placed them, as Yvette was saying, you placed them in the space. So you would put somebody there in a particular place. You would choose this intuitively. You would say, I want to put my mother there, my father there, and you'd place the relevant members of the family. And then the facilitator would check in how they were feeling in relation to each other. And it's almost like trying to pick up, if we were using the metaphor of the body, if the shoulder was dislocated, there'd be something out of place. So we're looking for where things are not in their right place. We're looking for where things aren't belonging fully. And that's exactly what you're describing, except you do this online. So people show up to do the inner work of putting things back in the right place so that they can hand back baggage from their unknown baggage that they're probably inheriting. So give me some examples of the kinds of burdens that you've seen people are inheriting without even realizing it.
I'll start with the entanglements and actually just seeing the patterns and being able to connect the dots, which is one of my key gifts, is just seeing the patterns that others may not be aware of, is just seeing what are those patterns that are being passed down from generation to generation. They keep repeating themselves, that are showing up because they're ready to be healed within the family system. And so that there speaks a lot to the misguided loyalties. And I've seen that even in my own life, how things are done just out of an act of love and loyalty to the system that I'm now consciously aware of, that you then start noticing them in your immediate space as well as your clients. And I've noticed that in my clients, because I've been able to see that within my own family dynamics, whether that be my own family of origin, my new family with my husband and our 2 boys, and also the family that I've married into, and all those dynamics at play, and those loyalties and affinities to one another, and the different, how things are so intertwined, and the patterns that I see repeating, even when a lot of personal development work has been done. I'll speak for myself, just how even with speaking and my whole journey around communication, how I had speech delay when I was little and growing up. And who needed words? Just intuitively feel into things, and who needed words and language. And then I learned how to speak, so that others understood me, so that I could feel heard, and how that was a journey within itself. And I've done so much healing work. And then entering into new relationships where there were other dynamics at play, and entanglements and loyalties. And I see that now. I see that more clearly now than what I did at the time that I was going through things. And so for a lot of the listeners, they may be at that space where they don't know what else to try. There's so many different things that they've been working on an individual, personal level, and yet things still aren't shifting.
Yeah.
And then we get to look systemically, and just noticing those patterns. Then after the thyroid cancer and the healing journey, and then deciding to then use my voice again, where I then made a choice to do things differently. I no longer am going to keep quiet to make others feel comfortable. There's still going to be that discernment, and I'm not going to swallow my truth.
Yeah.
So there's a way to say things and a way not to say things, yet I can still get my point across. And so that in itself has been another journey. And then how patterns repeat, because our oldest son then also had speech delay, and I was one of the only ones that understood him. And I'm like, oh, okay, well then this is an opportunity to take a step back, because I've done a lot of work within my family and all the dynamics of my immediate family, extended family, and how how things show up there around communication and what could be being passed down, that what systemically is now ready to be looked at and healed. And
Absolutely.
so there's been so much that shifted there in seeing those patterns. And so the burdens that we carry are these entanglements and loyalties to the system to keep those patterns going until they become so uncomfortable that somebody decides to then decide to do things a little differently.
Yeah, and to break
And
those patterns. Yes, yes.
and to just change the trajectory of where things are going and create healing so that we can bring healing to the collective that we belong to.
And I think that's a key point there that it blew my socks off. The power of making an internal shift and how it would not always, but quite often surprisingly ripple through the family. So let's say that you claim your voice and you hand back burdens inside of you, you hand back burdens to the family system, and you break some of those entanglements that were there out of love and loyalty but were not serving. It's like a shoulder out of loyalty trying to do the job of an elbow. It's well intended, but it's going to mess up the functionality of the arm, and it's going to cause suffering. So we try to, out of loyalty, move out of our placement. We try to be emotional parents to our parents, for example. So many different ways this shows up. We take the wrong place in the system out of loyalty. We get entangled trying to carry other people's burdens that aren't ours. And then there's the voice theme showing up for your son, because what is astonishing is that our descendants can also carry this. And so many of us are motivated to do this work to spare our children from repeating those patterns, as you're saying. And my mind, and I'm sure you've seen it time and time again, I don't use the word miracle lightly, but I've seen so many miraculous shifts where somebody, I remember actually many, many years ago, I was working with a client who hadn't spoken to her sister in 4 years. And her sister lived in a different country, and they literally had not spoken a word. And she constellated her relationship with her sister. She handed back burdens in the family system. She did exactly what you're talking about, broke some of those entanglements, took her right place. And she got home, and a few hours later, her sister phoned for the first time in 4 years and actually said, I just felt like it was time for us to heal. And I'm sure you've got dozens of these kinds of stories as well, where who knows, you can't ever be 100% sure. Is it a coincidence? Isn't it a coincidence? But I think many of us know that the field that you're talking about does respond. And it's breaking the mindset of I am an island. It is acknowledging the interconnectedness. And I love the fact that you are championing the role of being a coach and a facilitator that is showing people this interconnectedness and breaking through the ceilings and the barriers where people have tried everything, the personal growth, they've done as all they can, but they still hit the ceiling. And then they discover, oh, hang on, this is not mine. That's why I can't heal it. This belongs to the system. It belongs to the bigger body. So that's just super, super wonderful. And now how do you, because this, I'm even curious, right? We've chatted before. Enneagram is about personality. Yes, there's an energetic component. The way we love to use the Enneagram is very much the growth part, beyond typing. Now that you know your type, what do you do next? But tell me how you work with the Enneagram in the systemic, with systemic work.
So what I love about the systemic family constellation work is that it's not limited to us in relation to our families. It allows us to look at all the dynamics at play even internally within you and your relationship to yourself and the inner narratives. And by looking at the different inner narratives, we get to look at the things that are specific to our Enneagram types. We also get to look at the belief systems that are within our families that get passed down that we think are ours that may or may not even make sense to our own lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know that there's something systemic at play. And so we look at those in the field, which I love doing. And the way in which I include the Enneagram in that is also looking at the Enneagram as what are the overlays within our family dynamics. So just as each country can have an Enneagram type, so too does each family. And then just looking at what are the dominant Enneagram types within that family and how they may or may not show up within the constellation.
Okay, so just hang on, mind-blowing moments. So I think we must just pause there so that everyone can hear exactly what you just said, because a lot of Enneagram enthusiasts are they know their own types, they know about their growth paths, perhaps they've done some work on it, hopefully, and if they haven't, they're on that path. They know their loved ones, and maybe some people know about countries can have like an archetypal overlay of a type, but that a family can have an overlay. That's like, oh my word, let people really hear that. Your family of origin and your new family, I assume, can have an Enneagram type. And so are you talking about the how that almost like a filter or like a lens gets superimposed over the individual types?
Exactly that. So the same way in which our wings and our subtypes can tint our, the expression of our core Enneagram type, so too can the family Enneagram type tints and influence the way in which we express our core type. What is acceptable and feels safe within the environment in which we grow up, and that we know influences the level of health and the expression of our core types. Yet when there's so much trauma and abuse within a family, for example, how we can disconnect from our true type and also over-identify with the personality of what's acceptable within the dynamic that we're in, within that environment, that I've actually seen where mistyping can happen because people will over-identify with ways of being that they then think are their innate ways of being, whereas actual fact, it wasn't. It was actually just what was required for survival.
I love that. And there's an important distinction there, the ways of being, but perhaps it's also mimicked behavior. There's a mimicking. So if let's just make up an example here. Let's just say you're in a family archetype of 3 on the Enneagram, then the expected behavior will be very achiever-focused, very what did you do today? And if you have an Enneagram type innately that is not a 3, you're going to mimic the behavior, but it's going to feel incongruent. Mm-hmm. And that's if I'm assuming I'm understanding you. And that incongruence could mean that you take on some of the behaviors of a 3. But as, of course, you and I know we share this way of seeing the Enneagram, that the Enneagram is based on a deeper reason for behavior instead of the outward behavior. And that's, of course, where mistyping happens. So what a beautiful gift to help people to get clear about what the overlaying family Enneagram is, so that they can separate out their own behavior from the deeper true design and pattern, their actual Enneagram type. And then I'm sure that turns into an adjustment of behavior, where they now feel that they can align their behavior more authentically with their Enneagram type. Does that sound about right?
Yes, because I'm all about authenticity.
Yeah.
And so the way in which I guide my clients through releasing those imprinted family patterns is so that they can be authentically true to themselves in their relationships.
I love that. And I love that, although if I'm going to put something else on the table here, this idea of authenticity is a big theme at the moment. It's a huge, I'd say like a trending idea in the world. And I think for many, it's a rebound. It's exactly like people like yourself, even myself and my own 9 on the Enneagram journey. There's this endless looking for what that authentic voice is. But I want to balance that also with being mindful of that sometimes authenticity is also a mask. It can be but I'm being authentic when it's actually an overlay. And it's not. So there's a funny thing about we use the word, and I know you and I are on the same page here, that what we mean by authenticity is that natural true design. So like an apple tree is authentically an apple tree. It doesn't have a choice. But if it's pretending to be an orange tree, it could even call that I'm being authentic. Meantime, it's not, right? So authenticity can also be a mask. And I know that each of us have to be brave and honest with ourselves. And I think this is where your work is so gentle, and you hold such an incredibly safe space for people, for them to really do that honest work. It's to be mindful, loving, and compassionate, that we've also been doing the best we could. But if we discover, hey, I'm an apple tree that's been trying to make oranges for 30 years, because my family overlay is like make oranges or you don't belong. And then now I'm seeing how you connect that, because belonging is a big family constellation, systemic theme, and that could be a motivator to betray our Enneagram type. And if we had a very overpowering parent that sort of set the tone for a family dynamic and sort of caused let's say a 9 overlay for a family, and now here comes somebody who wants to break out of that. I always tease 9s because being a 9, the zombie apocalypse, kind of worst of 9, being half asleep, and then not only does that person have to overcome their own barriers, but they, exactly what you're saying, they have to face a feeling of betraying the loyalty of the family. A parallel that's coming up for me is how often people are loyal to their family of origin's financial status to their own detriment. So let's say they, and I know I saw this in my own journey, my family have always been let's say just below middle class, often really struggling, dignified, but really not often making ends meet and living very humble lives. But the hidden message of that was that the moment you earn more, you actually maybe don't belong in the family anymore. And there's this sort of look at you funny. And it took me years to work with that and to challenge that loyalty, to have a healthy financial life, really. And so I totally see now what you're doing. I think I'm getting an understanding of your work. So to make it really, I think, helpful, relevant, to pique people's interest, do you want to lean into the framework per se, if we haven't already, your actual framework? Does that sound like a good place to go? Yeah.
Yes. So the framework that has come about through my own lived experience and all the work that I've done and taken my clients through in their own respective deep inner dive journeys is what I call the Pearls of Luminous Love framework. And at the core is the pearl that we want to discover. And so there's a pearls method, which we look at personality, energetics, alignment, relationships, legacy, and skills. So that's the pearls method. And we look at that throughout the journey of where we then lighten your load, love your luminescence, and then live your legacy. And so in the lighten your load is where we're really looking at the family dynamics that are at play that are influencing you here now, in the now. And we look at limiting belief systems and belonging and placement and the burdens that we may be carrying out of that loyalty, that deep loyalty to the systems that we belong to. And we really take a deep dive there into the inner narratives and also our place of where we may not be in our true rightful place in relation to whichever dynamic we're looking at. So if we're looking at you in relation to your parents, that you are in place of child, and you in place with your partner, that you are actually placed as an equal and you're not trying to parent one another. And we look at all of that. And then the burdens of what is coming up for you in your relationships, in the ways in which we condition one another, how that shows up in the burdens that we're carrying. And then we look at the family of origin. So where are there those repeating patterns? And then we hand back those burdens, and so many different burdens that we carry of guilt and shames and deep sadnesses and depressions, and where it actually feels more than just the individual. It feels, you can feel the weight of the collective in those burdens that are being carried and passed down from generation to generation. And so we release those. And then we move into love your luminescence, where once we release those burdens, you can then receive the gifts and blessings that are waiting for you within your family systems.
Love it.
And then that's when I start bringing in the Enneagram 2 of really embodying your wholeness and the growth paths. And so up until this point, I've kept the Enneagram in my mind as to where there could potentially be the family overlays that are overshadowing the person's true expression of their type, and the entanglements of what has been at play, and then bringing that into them now embodying their wholeness, now that they've released what's not theirs to carry, and they're receiving the gifts that are then available to them, how they can then start embodying their wholeness and really stepping into the gifts that are available for them in their wholeness. And then I look at the Enneagram as stepping into what it is that they're desiring. So then at our healthy expression, what is then the highest, best qualities of the points that we are connected to. And then I'll set that up in a constellation where you can actually be on your Enneagram type and then your growth path, or the path that you are connected to. And then we'll walk that line and then notice the resistance that comes up for you, and then constellate that. And so I use it in multiple ways of seeing what else is at play that we haven't seen yet. And then once somebody is embodying more of their wholeness, we then bring that into your relationships and then take that into living your legacy, and then all the potential ripple effects that they can then just ripple out from your own inner healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think key things to highlight here are that it is really, really difficult for somebody to claim their wholeness and to live that quote unquote true apple tree path of themselves when they're still entangled to old family baggage. And certainly the Enneagram on its own can help people to see the map, but sometimes having the map is not the same as walking the map and walking the journey because of that resistance that you're talking about. So I think a lot of folks in the Enneagram world will relate to, they know if they're a 7 on the Enneagram that they have to, I call it open a door to 5, so that the 5 and they have a connection to 1 as well. And when both doors are open, they almost balance each other out so that 7 on the Enneagram can rise to its highest expression. But using your framework as an understanding here, if let's say that 7 on the Enneagram has a systemic baggage, a loyalty that keeps them feeling resistant to opening that door to 5, or they have some trauma in the past, or they have an overlay in the family field that really makes that opening of the door to 5 really, really challenging. Your path and your offering, your service is doing the necessary inner work. It's almost like discovering, okay, so this apple tree is not getting the right water, is not getting the right sunlight, is getting the wrong nutrients. It's a kind of mix of looking for what it's not, where the burdens might be. It's inherited some toxins from the soil, and now you're putting all of that right with the family systemic work, then showing them the map and helping them continue to stabilize that Enneagram so that apple tree can be what it was born to be, so that it can be thriving, contributing, relating from that highest expression from wholeness. Pearls of luminous love, exquisite and beautiful. So how can people contact you if they're interested in your work, and tell us about the summit that you are going to be speaking at? Now, if people are listening or watching when it's finished, I know you said the recordings will be available as well. So perhaps give us a little bit of details about the summit and then about how people can connect with you.
Okay. So just what you were saying about the framework is that it allows us to really see through the eyes of compassion and true compassion. How often it is that it's easier to look at other people's pain and think that we're seeing through the eyes of compassion, when we then step into the field and we're able to really get a bodily sense of what's really happening for ourselves in relation to the other, and the true healing that's possible, and for us to be with our own pain and the gifts that await within that, of then truly seeing through the eyes of compassion, really does bring that love alive and what is possible for us. And that is at the core heart of the Pearls of Luminous Love framework. So I just wanted to add that.
That's worth even a pause. So thank you for that. And because, compassion and self-compassion, compassion for each other and compassion for ourselves. Because I think you're so right. There's a tendency, I've seen it in the Enneagram world, where the Enneagram is hard. It's harsh when you look at it beyond a superficial level, beyond just a light touch for entertainment, But when you start getting into the Enneagram, it's really can feel very brutal, certainly to the ego. It can feel like, gosh, because the Enneagram looks at that grain of sand in the pearl. It looks at the original wound. It looks at, yes, there's a beautiful personality that's formed around it, but personalities can be prisons until their paths. So yeah, so inviting people into a state of compassion, to be compassionate about their own personality, to be compassionate that the words of the Enneagram, the labels, the descriptions are not attacks. They're not criticisms. They're not judgments. They are ways to recognize, oh, this is an apple tree, not an orange tree. And then if we said to you, oh, the apple tree's got leaf mold, it's not an attack. It's not a judgment. It's to actually have that compassionate detachment or dispassion, so that we can, with love and compassion, as you say, really help our personalities to rise and to grow. And it's exactly the same with systemic work, echoing what you're saying, just sort of adding to it. It's no one's quote-unquote fault necessarily. I mean, we are all responsible for the ripples we make, but we also make the ripples we make because of the river that we are born into. And if we inherited pollution, it's hard to make positive ripples. So there's this broader wisdom. There's this, it invites us into, oh my gosh, it invites us into the innocence and the understanding of why we do what we do, and that open-hearted compassion and the spirit of that, I think, is more than 50% of the healing power of the work. So thank you for sharing that, and it's a lovely place to kind of put a bow on that whole discussion. That, and maybe our if I can speak for us, and I think I can, we invite you to, if you're going to walk the Enneagram path, if you're going to walk the systemic healing path, remember the compassion and hold the journey with compassion. How does that sound?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for that pause in that beautiful bow of tying it all together, of how it is so interwoven and interconnected.
Yeah.
And all the beautiful gifts that await.
Stunning.
In that true love. And so people can find me at YvetteDuncan.com, and all the information's there. There's so much there of how people can connect with me. And then specifically around the Enneagram Summit is that it is an Enneagram Summit for helping professions. And so this is for all of those that love the Enneagram, work with the Enneagram, use the Enneagram in some shape or form, and incorporate it in their work and how it is that they serve their clients. And they're just wanting to get those accelerated results for their clients. Then this is definitely something that they'd love to tune into. And the invitation to join. Also for those that are just interested in the Enneagram, they don't have to be actively using it in their work with their clients, and they'll find huge benefit in it too. And it is a beautiful summit that I'm honored and delighted to have been invited to have been a part of, and I'm one of 25 speakers, many of which so many people will recognize faces and names of the people in the Enneagram world that are going to be speaking on this summit. And the summit is online, and they are recorded sessions, so you don't need to attend the sessions live. You'll have access to the recordings that'll actually be dropped each day throughout the course of the summit. So the summit is from the 13th to the 17th of May. And each day there's going to be 5 talks that you'll then gain access to. And so you can sign up for free to then receive those talks that you can listen to throughout the week. per what's delivered per day. And then if you're wanting, and you'll also get access to everybody's free gifts. And then if you're wanting to keep the recordings, there is an option to sign up for the VIP pass,
Brilliant.
which will then give you continued access to the recordings, all the gifts, the transcripts of all the talks, as well as additional bonuses.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put the links in the chat notes and in the show notes so that people can go and check that out. And if you're watching this or listening to this beyond those dates, I'm sure the links will still allow people to access past recordings. Otherwise, they can still contact you via your website.
Yes.
And you do have clients around the world, and you do a lot of online work. So no matter where you are in the world, people can actually take a part and enjoy connecting with you to do the Enneagram work and the systemic work.
Yes, and I just wanted to speak to about doing it online, how those that may be familiar with the Systemic Family Constellation work where they've only done it in person, where they may be wondering, how is this even possible virtually, is that in doing it virtually, the same safe space is recreated. And when we come together as a group, I open the container in a loving way where we all feel that circle, and as though we are all together, which we are, and it's felt, that the whole warmth is felt, even though we don't have the physical touch, that loving warmth and intimacy is still created.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard only good things about your work, Yvette. So thank you for your time. We've had a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate your sharing. And it has been an incredible journey to walk sort of beside you, watching your path. And I can't wait to see where the road takes you from here on out.
Well, thank you, Colleen. And I absolutely love being part of the Inner Life Skills family, and have looked up to you as my mentor and guide along the way.
It's a
And
mutual admiration society.
Yes, and a wise elder that I'll always have dear in my heart. So thank you, Colleen, and thank you for the space and opportunity to share here too, and for our beautiful conversation.
It's thank you. That warms my heart. Thanks.
Thank you.